Hello, my people. Welcome back to Creative Weirdo. I'm Lizzie if you're new here. We like to talk all things creative here, but obviously, I've mentioned to you guys a million times that talking about creativity itself is the most unlimited topic we could be talking about, okay? So if you're coming to this podcast and you're thinking, the only thing we're talking about is putting pen to paper and creating something outside of yourself, then I just want to open up space for other things to come through because we really talk about whatever the fuck is on my mind, okay? And sometimes the most random shit applies to my creative process. And I think that the beauty of this show in a lot of ways is how you see creativity in every single aspect of your life. Is how, when you look at your experiences and your life and the lens in which you're looking at your life when you're experiencing things, if you choose to look at it through a creative lens, it kind of changes your entire outlook on what is actually presented to you. So if that sounds way too out there, then we'll get into it today, no worries. But honestly, I come to you guys today because I'm feeling a little rage baited by the world. And I think a lot of us are, but that's not what I'm here to dissect today. But even on a smaller scale, I just feel like we could use a lot more love in the world right now. We could use a lot more understanding and compassion and things like that. And it's just been it's been really frustrating, honestly. With that being said, I feel like since the world is so crazy right now, it's been making me kind of cling to my creativity more. And that's not the only reason why I'm clinging to creativity more, but it's brought up this line of thinking lately where whenever I have spare time, because now it's the summer and I kind of have a little more time on my hands. And naturally, I kind of feel a little more creative in the summer because we kind of work in tandem with the seasons and stuff. So I've been taking it upon myself every single time I have a spare moment to do something creative, okay? And I'm very intuitive with my creative process. So if I feel intuitively that I should be creating something, I follow that completely without hesitation. But the thing that I've been realizing lately is that sometimes I think I get myself into this spiral of, oh, I need to create something. And then I'm not realizing that what's actually happening is my ego is coming in telling me I need to create something, when what I'm actually feeling called to do is sit with myself and collect myself and see what comes up and what's actually drawing me creatively. Because creativity is such an umbrella term. Like, if I'm just telling myself, oh, I'm feeling called to be creative, then I kind of run into this line of thinking that can be very detrimental to my creative process, because I'll start to be like, oh, I need to be creative. So like, what do I do? Do I sew? Do I paint? Do I color? Do a puzzle? Write a song? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many, for me, I have so many different creative avenues and things that I like to pour into, that if I'm not being called to something specific, it's really easy for my ego to come in and take over during that time. And that's not me saying that those times where I get those creative impulses that I'm getting it all wrong. And my ego's telling me that I need to go to creativity and what I actually need is to sit down. No. I'm saying that when you're not being pulled to something specific, that leaves a lot more room for ego to come in. And if you want to think about it in different terms outside of creativity, think of it that way. Because for me, this comes up a lot when I want to move my body, but I don't know what I'm feeling called to do. Like, am I feeling called to lift up a dumbbell? Am I feeling called to do a slow yoga flow? Am I feeling called to do a really hard yoga class? Or I don't even know, run on the treadmill? Like, it's very rare when I'm feeling called to do that. But when I am, I do honor it. But yeah, when I get in these states of like, oh, I'm feeling called, like I know deep down the overarching kind of theme of what I'm feeling called to do, but I don't necessarily know exactly what that is. Immediately, I'm trying to retrain myself now to immediately just go, okay, sit with it. You don't have to act on it immediately, because I think I've just honestly been in this headspace lately where I have this belief system that if I'm feeling called to be creative and that impulse comes, I need to act on it immediately. You know, if you listen to creative people talk about the creative process ever, you've probably heard them say before that If that idea comes to you, it's a gift. If that idea comes to you, it came to you at that time for a reason. So you need to act on that, because if you don't act on it, someone else will. But if you live your life with the mindset of, if you don't act on it right now, then someone else will, then you acting on it is out of ego, which means that you're not actually giving your full presence to whatever's calling out to you. So you're not putting your best foot forward for that thing, which means that someone still can do it better than you. Someone still can steal that idea and do it better than you, because you didn't give it your full attention. You were more concerned with the timing of how it played out, you know? Because the thing about creativity is that it begs you to be honest with yourself, first and foremost. And if you already don't know how you're feeling, how can you possibly be honest in that process, you know? Like, if those thoughts are coming up that are like, oh, I need to be creative right now, I need to act on this, I feel this like energetic splurge of motivation to do something, but I just don't know what it is, then you're not being honest with yourself about what it is that you're feeling called to. And honestly, I'm finding it hard to kind of navigate this feeling that I'm trying to put into words right now. And honestly, this whole episode is us figuring it out together, okay? Like most of my episodes. Because I do feel pulled in two different directions, and they're very strong feelings and very strong energies. And on one side, I'm like, oh, but if I have these creative impulses, I need to respect them by actualizing them and making them into something tangible, you know? And then on the other end, it's like, what's the rush? Like, you know, when you get motivation to do something and you like do it as much as you possibly can, like you wring out all the energy that you have for that one thing because you had motivation for it. And then you find yourself in this place of like eventually reaching burnout with it because you've exhausted all of your energy instead of just like displacing it evenly a long time. I feel like I'm kind of talking in tongues right now, but to be honest, I feel like lately I've had this really debilitating fear of reaching burnout, because I know that every summer I work really hard and I try to make as much money as I can, and I try to really capitalize off of my creativity as best as I can because I have the time to do it. And at the end of every summer, I always feel so burnt out going into a new like school year, because I'm a college student right now. So, you know, at the end of the summer is a new semester for me. And I always feel like I go into the semester not being able to put my best foot forward academically, because my brain is so wired to only think creatively and only think about like work and like making money. So it's hard to flip that switch. And I always feel like I like ran out of energy by the end of the summer. And I know that's literally not possible. And burnout is a complete mental thing. Like, it really is so mental, and it just manifests in your body as exhaustion, which adds to the mental game that it plays with you. And I've done an episode on burnout already, so you can go back and listen to that if you want to hear more about burnout. But I just think it's necessary to mention it in this conversation today, because that's been a huge fear for me. And it sucks because it's almost taking away from my summer, because every single step I take, no matter how present I am, matter how productive I am, I have this lingering thought in the back of my head after the fact of like, maybe I'm doing too much. Like, maybe I should be taking a step back in a way. And it's honestly really hard, because I am someone who I believe to find pretty good balance in my life. Like, I balance things out very well, because the way that I go about my life is very intuitively. So if at the end of the day, you know, I just worked 6 hours and then I get off and I'm feeling called to go hang out with a friend, I hang out with a friend. If I'm feeling called to have a slow night by myself, I do that. Like, I'm always following my intuition in that way. But I think since I'm such an intuitive individual, I don't prioritize sitting alone with myself enough and actually just collecting my thoughts and seeing what I'm telling myself versus what I actually am feeling called to do. And it's been showing up a lot in my creative process lately, obviously, because I'm talking about it today. So I'm not here to give a bunch of advice, okay? And I'm usually not here to really give y'all advice. I'm really just here to talk through things and take inspiration from past ideas and transform it into new ideas and things like that. But the only piece of advice I could give you guys based on what I'm saying is to sit with yourself more. I think that applies to literally every problem that you could ever have in your life. The solution is probably to sit with yourself. And if that's not the solution, like, it's not going to hurt to sit with yourself. You know, that's always a good thing to fall back to. It's really easy for me once I find something that works for me to kind of overdo that, even if it's a healthy thing. I'm literally talking to you guys about how intuitively moving through my life and that being my way of finding balance can also be the destructive thing to me, you know? But I don't, people never really talk about that because it almost like doesn't make any sense. Like, it's kind of counterintuitive that you following your intuition is sometimes what gets you into those places of burnout, you know? So I think overall what I'm saying right now is just we need to sit with ourselves more and actually see where we're at. Because the thing is, when you're going through your life so intuitively, you're always hyper fixated on how much energy you have. And there's no such thing as your energy being depleted. Okay, I know we talk about it like that sometimes because we talk about things that either drain us or they fill our cup. And that's symbolic for like our energy levels. And I think that when we cling to that too much, we just get hyper fixated on how much energy we have to go through with the things that we want to be prioritizing, because we all have things that we want to prioritize, right? Like right now, I want to be prioritizing moving my body more, exercising, just in any way, shape, or form. But my issue is that I'm such an intuitive person that sometimes I'm like, oh, but my body's really tired. So maybe it doesn't need to be exhausted right now by going and doing 30 jump squats. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think I would ever willingly do jump squats unless someone would force me to, but and I wasn't always this way. Like, I used to be a fucking gym rat, okay? I used to be lifting hella weight in the gym, like in an excessive, unhealthy kind of way. But that was a different mindset. And now that I've come to really understand how that mindset did not suit me, it makes me very avoidant of anything in my life that makes me feel like it's more of a rule that I have to follow rather than an intuitive feeling. But sometimes you need to have some structure for yourself in order to actually get more motivation to do things. Like, I keep coming back to the example of working out just because I guess that's been on my mind lately. But like, when you haven't worked out for a really long time, it's obviously harder to get back into it. But when you are gradually getting back into it and you do it once, then it gives you more motivation to do it again. And the next time it's a little bit easier, and so on and so forth. So everything kind of works that way in life. And, you do something once and it proves to you that you can do it and it's safe to do it. So then you are more acclimated to do it again. And that's the truth for things that are beneficial for you. And it's also the truth for things that are not so beneficial for you and actually hurt you a little more than they help you. So we're going to turn the gears a little more into creativity now. So I've been podcasting now for, let's see, April. No way. Has it been 3 years? Okay, so I've been podcasting for 3 years, which is my like main art form, I would say. And creativity, like I said before, begs honesty, right? So throughout my entire creative process and everyone's creative process, it's a lot about, authenticity and, showing up as your most authentic self so the people can find you and so that you're making honest work and you're, actually transpiring those insights that you're getting into something tangible and something in the world. And that part, I don't think ever leaves. I think artists should constantly be asking themselves, is this honest? Is this authentic? Is this true? And that doesn't mean that it has to be finished. It has to look polished. Sometimes the most honest thing is the unfinished projects that you put out anyways. Since I worked so hard at finding what my most authentic self even looked like, because at the time I just didn't even know what it looked like. So I was figuring out what that was while I was creating tangible things. I was also creating my most authentic self, And I think that's still happening to this day and probably always forever will be. But now, since I've been doing it for some time, I know who I am as an artist. Like, I do have more of an idea of how I create, what works for me, what doesn't. Like, I've tried, I've gone through the trial and error of, does it work for me to edit this way? Does it work for me to schedule things or to just create kind of freely and intuitively? Like, all those things. Because, there's no one size fits all when it comes to the actual creative process. Everyone's going to look a little different, but there are things that come up that we all have in common, and that's kind of what I talk about on this podcast, are just like the things that come up. I'm not necessarily sitting here being like, you have to do this, that, and the other thing in order to be an artist. Like, that's never something I'm going to say on this podcast. And my last episode was all about how everyone is an artist. And I will always stand by that. But just because everyone is an artist doesn't mean that they're all embodying their artistry. So now that I've gotten to a point where I feel like I've embodied my artistry the most that I ever have before, I feel like I've gotten comfortable with just creating how I know works for me. And I haven't been trying anything really new, because in my head, I'm almost like, well, the most important thing for your creative process is to take it seriously, because that's you respecting yourself as the artist and respecting God, because that's where your creative insights come from, if you want to believe that, and all the things, it's like it all comes down to, like, when you're prioritizing it, that's you respecting a higher power, respecting yourself, all that kind of stuff. And since I know that I'm prioritizing it, I feel like it's easy for my ego to slip in through the cracks sometimes and make action feel rushed almost. And I know I explained that a little bit deeper in the beginning, so I'm not going to get super into it, but taking your creativity seriously is a huge part of the process, but creating is vital to come from a playful place. Like, you cannot create anything honest if it's coming from a super rigid place, because the thought process of taking things seriously is different than acting seriously when you're creating something. You know what I mean? Like, right now on the mic, I'm not being super serious. I'm not following like a step-by-step process. I'm not being super rigid with myself. And that's the only way that I'm able to let honesty bleed into the mic, So I've been saying a million times throughout this episode that in order to be creative, you have to be honest. So the reason why a lot of people think that they're not creative is because they're actually just not being honest with themselves, And to be honest with yourself is the most brave thing that you can do, because when you're being honest with yourself, you're not just telling yourself what you want to hear. And bravery has to do with the willingness to be misunderstood. So if you're willing to put your most honest thought out there, even if others don't agree with it, then that is the bravest act of kindness that you could ever give to yourself. And I've been thinking a lot lately about masochism and perfectionism. And if you don't know what masochism is, masochists are people who get satisfaction from basically thinking about themselves negatively. And I think all of us could name at least one person in our lives right now that fits that description. Okay. So masochists are not rare to find. I would honestly argue that more often than not, people are masochists. Even if it's not obvious, it comes out in how well they're able to be a friend to you. Because if you're a masochist, that means that you're also insecure. And insecure people just don't make good friends, to be honest, because they are constantly at war with themselves. And since they're at war with themselves, they're always looking for things in other people to make them feel better about themselves or to make them feel worse about themselves, to solidify their already insecure beliefs. So honestly, insecure people really don't make good friends. And I'm learning that. I am. And it's a hard learn. I'm not gonna lie, it's a hard learn because like you have so much love for them because you see yourself in them because we all have a lot of insecurities and things that we've had to work through. It also makes you feel like you can only be such a good friend to them because nothing that you say to them positively to uplift them is ever really getting through to them. Like you feel like nothing you can say is going to make it better. So like insecure people are like those friends that you could give the most heartfelt advice to and you'll think that they're listening to every single word and then they'll go and do the opposite. Like that's what it feels like being friends with insecure people. And I know this sounds like I'm literally just putting people down, but that's never my intention and I don't feel like over explaining myself, so I'm not going to. Anyways, start talking about how masochism disguises itself as perfectionism. So people who get satisfaction from self-inflicted pain or insecurity are more often than not also perfectionists a lot in their life. And not everyone is. Sometimes masochists show up as the opposite, where they kind of self-sabotage a lot to always make themselves the victim of their lives. So there's like kind of two ends of the spectrum. But in terms of perfectionism, if art begs you to be honest, then being a perfectionist and being an artist can't exist at the same time. But I think a big reason why so many people are masochistic is because they're afraid to take themselves seriously. And I think you can find a million reasons why they're afraid to take themselves seriously, but kind of has to do with the fact that if they are seen taking themselves seriously, then they're telling other people that they're someone of substance. They're someone who should be respected more. But they don't respect themselves, obviously, because they don't see the power they have within them in any way because they live through insecurity. So it's more comforting for others to kind of have a more sheltered idea of who you are rather than thinking of you as someone who has to live up to some expectation in a way. I could be going in the wrong direction with this because these thoughts, they're half baked as fuck. Like I have not put them in the oven long enough at all. But that tails off with what I was saying earlier because in order to actually use your creativity, I was going to say be creative, but we all have the ability to be creative. In order for us to tap into our creativity, we have to take it seriously because we don't prioritize anything that we're not taking at least a little bit seriously. It has to have some value to it, you know? It has to either bring something to our life, entertain us, help us learn something, etc., etc. And that's also how we consume other people's creations. So if you already are afraid of taking yourself seriously because you have this masochistic way of thinking, then that's always going to stunt you from doing anything creative. But I was talking about how sometimes I'll feel like, I'm feeling really called to do something, and then I don't realize my ego is slipping in, and that's the thing that's actually pulling me to act on it immediately. And that brings in the conversation of using your discernment to figure out when ego is talking to you versus when spirit's talking to you, all that kind of stuff. But something that's kind of helped my line of thinking with all this stuff is wrapping your head around the fact that the hard work lies in you learning how to let yourself create from a playful place rather than in the work itself. When we look at a quilt that someone made, in our heads, the hard part of making that was the actual labor of stitching everything together. But the hard part was before any of that actually started. It's when the idea comes to you that you want to make a quilt. Now you're in this place where your ego can come in immediately and tell you, okay, it has to look like this. Go look on Pinterest immediately to find one that resonates with you. Go find scraps immediately. Go to the store and buy what you need to buy. All that kind of stuff. That's like ego coming in and telling you have to act on it immediately. And you can still follow that ego and make something creative out of it. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But the only way to make sewing that quilt an enjoyable thing is for you to make it playful, to make it unserious and kind of laid back and just letting your creative ideas kind of come to you in the process of it, not telling yourself that you have to have all the ideas before even starting. And that's the issue that a lot of us run into, is that we feel like we have to have it all figured out before we even put pen to paper. And that's why it's really easy for our ego to come in and be like, oh, you have to act on it. You have to act on it now. And then to feel stuck and not know where to go, because we're like, okay, but what am I even acting on? Like, I need to have an idea and I don't have an idea. And then I don't have the materials for it and all that. But the point is to work with what you got. It's to understand that you have everything that you need within you. So when you take a second, when you have a creative impulse and you sit with it, that's you letting the creative idea talk to you rather than talk for you, you know? So you're now in this really cool conversation with God, or if you don't believe in that, then fill in that word with anything. But when you're actually sitting with that creative impulse and you're becoming curious with it, like almost, if it helps, you're kind of looking at your creative process as a person outside of yourself that has specific needs. But in order for you to actually understand what those needs are, you just need to open yourself up to it. You just need to be open and honest and ask questions and give it your full attention. You know, like, you can't understand another person's needs by distracting yourself with a million other things and just guessing, throwing things at a wall, seeing what sticks. You need to actually just sit with it, you know? And sometimes the throwing things at a wall will work every now and again, but when that's our line of action every time, we're going to find ourselves in these holes of feeling inadequate. So that gets me to the point of distractions and how sometimes when we view things outside of our creative process as a distraction, that can actually be the most detrimental thing to our creative process, because now we're creating hierarchies in our head when it comes to creativity. And we're telling ourselves that creativity looks like this one thing. And if it doesn't look like that, it's not creative. And it's interesting because I feel like you can also look at it both ways when it comes to the distraction kind of part, because it might help you to look at creativity as like a sacred practice almost, because then it might help you tap into it more, you know, like that becomes more of like an intentional act versus telling yourself that creativity is whatever you're doing in that moment. Then it can kind of make it a little more ambiguous, and it might make you feel like you're never actually being creative if you're always creating. I don't know. Does that make sense? Again, I'm talking in tongues a lot today, but I feel like that's where my mind has been lately. I just kind of feel like I don't have any like well-rounded thoughts lately. I'm getting these like insights that pop in every now and again, but there's no like through line almost. And I feel like it's kind of obvious in this episode that that's the case, but I'm just being honest, that's where my brain is lately. But just to emphasize it again, sitting with yourself is sometimes the most creative thing that you can do. So that's honestly just what I want to emphasize in this episode. Like, you don't always have to act immediately. You don't always have to. And, you know, sometimes acting immediately just means like writing something down. It doesn't mean actually getting out your sewing machine and going to work. And you'll know the difference between when you're really feeling called to do something like that or when it's just ego telling you to do it immediately, you know? Like, you'll know the difference once you start acclimating yourself to understanding what the difference is. And that starts by sitting with yourself. So I know I sounded like a broken record in this episode, but I hope that makes sense. I'm ready for today's weird wrap up, okay? I'm ready for it. So today I want to talk a little tiny bit about social media, okay? And it will probably all have a way of tying into this episode. So I had this thought the other day where I was like, okay, if Finstas, like second Instagram accounts, if you don't know what a Finsta is, if Finstas exist, then doesn't that mean that everyone's just performing? Like, obviously not everyone has a second Instagram account, but the people that do, like, in a way, doesn't that just mean that we're not being our most authentic selves on the platforms that we consider our main platforms, you know? And I really do think that social media has kind of just turned into more of a stage where it's like, look at me, look at my life. Here's the best things that have happened to me lately. Now we're really big into like photo dumps. So everyone's posting like 20 pictures of the past month of their life, or so it seems, month of their life. But a lot of people are probably collecting photos from like the past fucking year and just putting it together to make it look like aesthetic. Like, we're just so concerned with how things look rather than how they actually feel. And I feel like you see so many posts where it's so clear that that person did not ask themselves, does this feel honest to me before pressing post? And that's okay. Like, that has nothing to do with me. So I'm not shaming these people at all. And I also feel like the world and social media has kind of made us to be this way. So it's no one's fault. But there's just this perpetuating cycle of posting performative shit on the internet just for people's attention, you know? Even the idea of like turning off your likes on a post. Like, I started turning my likes off on all my Instagram posts because I was like, I don't care about likes, so fuck it, I'll turn them off. And then I came to realize this past week that I feel like the fact that I have my likes off is making me now feel like I am caring more about the likes, that I have to like hide them almost. And now I unhid all of my likes and stuff because I'm like, I don't care about likes, so why would I hide them? If you're hiding behind something, then you're obviously caring about it. Like, I'm taking the extra step when I'm posting to unhide the likes. So I obviously do care about them. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's just symbolic for how we go about social media a lot of the times. It's like we feel like we're being authentic because we're posting, but posting itself is not you being honest. Just like creating itself is not always you being honest. You can still make a piece of art that isn't honest. It's just not going to be your best piece of art that you could have created. And best is not really a great word to use, but you know what I mean. And it just feels like everyone in the world is over consuming. Some of us in more areas than others, but we are all over consuming to some extent, okay? And a lot of it has to do with how much we're consuming other people's lives when it comes to social media. And we've even gotten to a point where we're kind of going over the top now. Instagram used to be an app where we would post one picture and sometimes barely even caption it and just post whatever the fuck we wanted. And now we're posting like 20 pictures at a time, you know? And the more we get deeper and deeper into the social media world, the more oversaturated it's becoming. And I feel like since it's so oversaturated, it kind of makes us numb to it all. Like, we're desensitized to feeling overstimulated by overconsumption. And since we're overconsuming in so many areas of our life, I feel like we sometimes default to feeling like we don't have energy to do things because we're expending our energy in other areas. But like I said in the beginning of this episode, there's no such thing as actually expending all of your energy. Like, there's no such thing as your energy being completely drained because you are energy. Like, you know what I mean? It's not something that you like have, it's something that you are. So it doesn't really make sense for you to say, I have no energy left. Because it's like, what do you mean? You're alive. Like, what do you mean you don't have any energy left? That's just like a mental, physical thing. I don't know. I feel like I might be going in a weird direction, but it's called the weird wrap up for a reason. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, but it feels like since we're so desensitized from it all, no one is taking the effort to actually call out the bullshit and be truly honest. Like, more often than not, you see people performing on social media, even if they know in the back of their head that they're just doing what's trendy or they're whatever. It's like no one has the courage to actually say the honest thing anymore. We only feel like we have enough energy to put it towards what we already know how to do. And it's funny because it's like you want all eyes on you in that sense when you're performing and not being honest. But then being honest is so scary because of the fear of being misunderstood, you know? But it's like people are going to misunderstand you even if you are posting what you think people want to see. It's just stupid. Like, I'm just seeing so many holes in society lately that are just rage baiting the fuck out of me, low key. And it's making me feel like, okay, why do I even have a personal Instagram if I have this podcast Instagram? Because I don't really fucking care. Like, even on my personal Instagram, I'm just posting random shit. So, like, why do I have two Instagrams? First world problems. But I do think that social media is a really big caveat to, like, the state of the world. And it all intertwines in a really crazy way, and it can be very symbolic. So just thought it was interesting, and I wanted to mention that. And if you guys have any more thoughts on that, because I know that my thoughts are not very well-rounded today, please add to the conversation. My episodes are me opening the conversation up. Y'all take what you get from it and send it back to me, see what comes up. Like, I want to hear all the things. So yeah, reach out to me if you would like. My social medias will be in the show notes below as always. Video episodes are always exclusive on YouTube if you're not already watching from there. And yeah, I'm just sending you all the love and light in the world. And I challenge you to sit with yourself even for 2 minutes today. Right now, right after this episode. Turn off all distractions. Don't play music after this. Don't play another episode. Don't go searching on social media to find a dopamine boost of some sort. After you hear my voice, pause where you are, take 3 deep breaths, and just be where you are and see what comes up. Okay? Sending you all the love, and I'll talk to you soon. Kisses.